Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, your go-to source for inside stories, cutting-edge research, and the latest updates in the world of dairy farming. Our 151st episode looks at how to drought-proof your herd. So please grab a glass of milk, sit back, and let's get started with this episode.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where tradition meets innovation. I'm Bella, and today we're tackling a subject that's transforming dairy farming as we know it. We're diving deep into drought-proofing your herd with technology that would make your grandpa's head spin. Let's start with a scene we all know too well. A farmer standing in their field, squinting at the sky, hoping those dark clouds bring rain and not just empty promises. It's a picture that's been painted on farms across generations. But here's the thing. While that image might stir up nostalgic feelings, it's also stirring up something else: massive financial losses. Let me break down some numbers that might make you sit up straighter. Every time you flood a field using traditional irrigation, you're literally washing away 40% of your water, and with it, your profits. We're not talking small change here. On a typical 100-acre field, that translates to thousands of dollars literally evaporating into thin air. But it gets worse. Traditional flood irrigation isn't just wasteful. It's actively harmful to your bottom line in ways you might not even realize. When you're overwatering, you're not just wasting water. You're compacting soil, reducing nutrient availability, and creating perfect conditions for fungal diseases. Your energy bills skyrocket because you're pumping more water than needed, and your yields actually decrease despite using more resources. Here's what that looks like in real numbers. Up to 50% of water lost through evaporation and runoff. Energy costs typically 30% higher than necessary. Yield reductions of up to 20% due to poor water management. Additional fertilizer costs because nutrients are being washed away. But here's where things get interesting. While some farmers are stuck in this costly cycle, others are revolutionizing their operations with smart irrigation systems. These early adopters are seeing remarkable results. Banking an extra $202 per acre on average, cutting water usage by 20 to 30% while maintaining or improving yields, slashing energy costs by up to 38% through optimized pumping, reducing fertilizer waste by precisely controlling water distribution. Now, you might be thinking, sure, Bella, but how much is all this fancy tech going to cost me? That's where things get really interesting. The USDA's Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, covers up to 75% of installation costs. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They've run the numbers and know exactly how much money and resources are being wasted with outdated systems. Let me share a story that really drives this home. Last year, I visited a dairy farm in Wisconsin that had been struggling with irrigation costs for years. The owner, Jim, was skeptical about smart irrigation, thought it was just another Silicon Valley gimmick. But after losing nearly 30% of his corn silage to irregular watering patterns, he decided to give it a shot. Started small, just one 50-acre field. Within 3 months, the difference was so dramatic that he installed sensors across his entire operation. His water bills dropped by 40%, his feed quality improved, and his herd's milk production increased by 3%. All because he finally knew exactly when, where, and how much to water. But here's what really matters. This isn't just about saving water or even money. It's about securing the future of your operation. Climate patterns are becoming more unpredictable, water rights are getting more restricted, and input costs keep climbing. The farmers who survive and thrive will be the ones who adapt to these changes now, not later. Before I hand it over to Douglas, who's going to dive into the technical details of how these systems actually work, let me leave you with this thought. Your grandpa was a hell of a farmer. He used every tool and technique available to him to build the operation you have today. The question is, are you doing the same?
Thanks, Bella. Let's get technical. But don't worry, folks. I'll keep this practical and actionable. I'm going to walk you through exactly how these smart irrigation systems work, what they cost, and most importantly, how they can transform your operation. First, let's talk about the heart of these systems: soil moisture sensors. These aren't your basic moisture meters from the hardware store. We're talking about sophisticated electromagnetic probes that create a complete underground map of your soil's water content. Think of it as an MRI for your fields. These sensors are typically installed at 4 critical depths: 6, 12, 18, and 24 inches. Why these specific depths? Because they correspond to your crop's root zones. At 6 inches, we're monitoring surface moisture. At 12 and 18 inches, we're tracking the primary root zone where most water uptake occurs. And at 24 inches, we're keeping an eye on deep moisture reserves. Let me break down the 3 main types of systems available. First, you've got your basic single-depth sensors. These run about $200 to $700 and are perfect for starting out. They're like dipping your toe in the water, pun intended. They'll give you solid data from one depth point, usually the critical 12-inch zone. Next up are multi-depth systems, ranging from $600 to $750. These create a more complete picture of your soil moisture profile. Think of it as upgrading from a single security camera to having coverage of your entire property. Finally, there's the Cadillac of soil monitoring, telemetered systems. Yes, they're $3,000 and $3,500 per field, but remember what Bella said about those EQIP grants covering 75%. These systems don't just collect data, they analyze it, predict water needs, and send alerts straight to your phone. But here's where it gets really interesting. These sensors don't just measure water, they're measuring the electrical conductivity of your soil. Water changes how soil conducts electricity, and these probes can detect changes as small as 0.1% in moisture content. It's incredibly precise. Let me paint a picture of how this works in real time. It's 6 a.m. You're having your first cup of coffee. Your phone buzzes. The sensors in Field 3 have detected that moisture levels at 18 inches are dropping below optimal levels for your alfalfa. But, and here's the clever part, the system has also checked tomorrow's weather forecast. It sees there's a 70% chance of rain in the afternoon. Instead of telling you to irrigate now, it advises waiting 24 hours to save you time and money. Now, let's talk about the brain of the operation, the IoT network and data management system. Each sensor connects to a central hub through low-power, long-range wireless technology. This hub then sends data to cloud servers every hour. But it's not just collecting numbers. It's running them through sophisticated algorithms that consider historical weather patterns, crop-specific water needs, soil type and drainage patterns, evapotranspiration rates, current growth stage of your crops. This is where modern farming gets fascinating. The system learns your field's specific characteristics over time. It knows that the north corner of Field 2 drains faster than the rest. It remembers that your clay-heavy bottom land holds moisture longer. It tracks how different crops affect soil moisture at different growth stages. But what really matters is how this translates to your bottom line. Let's break down the ROI. Initial investment for a 200-acre system, 3 FIP coverage, $2,620. You're out of pocket $875. Now the returns. Water savings, $45 acre annually. Energy savings, 30 acre annually. Yield increase, 127 acre annually. Total benefit, $202 acre annually. On 200 acres, that's $40,400 in the first year. Even without the EPIP grant, you're looking at a payback period of less than 6 months. But here's what often gets overlooked. These systems integrate with other smart farming technologies. They can talk to your center pivot systems, automatically adjusting irrigation schedules. They connect with weather stations to optimize watering times. Some even link to satellite imagery to spot problem areas before they're visible from the ground. The real power comes from the predictive capabilities. Traditional irrigation is reactive. You water when things look dry. Smart irrigation is proactive. You prevent stress before it impacts your crops. It's the difference between treating a sick cow and preventing the illness in the first place. Speaking of prevention, let me hand it back to Bella, who's going to share some remarkable success stories from farms that have made this transition. But remember this, every day you wait to upgrade your irrigation is another day of watching profits evaporate. Literally.
Thanks, Douglas. Those numbers are compelling, but I know our listeners want to hear how this plays out in the real world. Let's dive into some success stories that prove this isn't just theoretical, it's transforming real farms right now. Let me take you to San Jacinto, California, to Brad Scott's dairy operation. Now, if you're picturing a small experimental farm, think again. We're talking about an 1,100 cow operation that's completely revolutionized how dairy farms think about water management. Brad's story is fascinating because it started with a crisis. San Jacinto was facing severe water restrictions, and traditional wells weren't cutting it anymore. Instead of seeing this as a death sentence for his operation, Brad saw an opportunity. He approached his local municipality, the Eastern Municipal Water District, with an innovative proposal, using reclaimed water for irrigation. Now, if you're raising your eyebrows at reclaimed water, you're not alone. But here's what makes this brilliant. This water gets pumped through distinctive purple pipes, yes, actually purple, across the farm. It's perfectly safe for crop irrigation, and here's the kicker, it's drought-proof. While other farmers are worrying about well levels, Brad has a guaranteed water supply. Let me break down what this meant for Brad's operation. 30 million gallons of groundwater saved annually. Irrigation costs reduced by 40%. Consistent water supply regardless of drought conditions. Premium pricing for being an environmentally conscious producer. But Brad and his brother didn't stop there. They looked at their operation holistically and thought, if we can revolutionize our water usage, what else can we do? They installed solar panels that now provide 25 to 33% of their farm's energy needs. Remember, they're in San Jacinto, 342 sunny days per year. That's not just good for the environment, it's good business. Then came their masterstroke, a manure-to-diesel conversion system. They're literally turning waste into fuel for their farm equipment. Brad's quote says it all. We're excited not only to be the first dairy farm in the country to implement this process, but also to be on the leading edge of what we hope will be a huge leap forward in sustainable animal-based agriculture. But let's head north to Alberta, Canada, where something equally revolutionary is happening. A group of dairy farmers has formed what they call a smart water collective. Now, this is where the power of community meets technology. 15 farms near Lethbridge share their sensor data and coordinate their irrigation schedules. Think about that for a minute. Instead of each farm working in isolation, they're creating a regional water management system. The results are staggering. 25% reduction in collective carbon footprint, 100,000 kilowatt hours saved in pumping energy, improved groundwater management across the entire region, better negotiating power with equipment suppliers. One of the collective's members, Sarah Johnson, told me something profound. We used to think sharing water data was giving away farm secrets. Now we realize that when we share data, we all win. Let me walk you through how you can implement these changes on your farm. I call it the 3-month transformation plan. Month 1, start small. Rent a basic sensor kit for your worst performing field. Cost $200 per month. Focus on learning the system and collecting baseline data. Track water usage, energy costs, and crop response. Month 2, scale smart. Expand to your critical feed crop areas. Apply for EKIP funding. Begin networking with neighboring farms. Start documenting water savings and yield improvements. Month 3, maximize benefits. Connect with your local groundwater sustainability agency. Join or form a data sharing network. Apply for additional sustainability grants. Plan full farm implementation. But here's what really matters. This isn't just about individual farms anymore. We're seeing the emergence of what I call smart farming communities. In drought-prone areas, these networks of connected farms are becoming more resilient than any single operation could be alone. Take the Central Valley Water Coalition in California. 30 dairy farms connected their irrigation systems and shared data. Within 1 year, they reduced their collective water usage by 35% while maintaining production levels. More importantly, they gained a stronger voice in regional water policy discussions. The key lesson from all these success stories is clear. The future of dairy farming isn't just about adopting new technology. It's about using that technology to build stronger, more resilient farming communities. Now, I'll hand it back to Douglas for our closing thoughts and specific action steps you can take today.
Thanks, Bella. Those success stories really drive home what's possible. Now let's bring this all together and talk about what it means for your operation today and in the future. The reality is, we're at a critical turning point in dairy farming. The old way of managing water isn't just inefficient, it's becoming impossible to sustain. But here's the exciting part. For the first time in farming history, we have technology that can turn water management from an art into a science. Let me share some numbers that really put this in perspective. A recent study from Utah State showed that dairy farms implementing precision irrigation saw 19.4% increase in net income, 15 to 20% reduction in water usage, 38% decrease in energy costs, 22% improvement in feed quality. But here's what these numbers don't show. Peace of mind. Imagine knowing exactly how much water your crops need, exactly when they need it, and exactly where to put it. Imagine never having to guess about irrigation timing again. Imagine your phone telling you, hold off watering field 3, rain coming tomorrow. Let's talk about what this means for the future of your operation. We're entering an era where water rights will become increasingly restricted and valuable. The farms that survive and thrive will be the ones that can prove they're using water efficiently. It's not just about conservation, it's about documentation. Here's your action plan for the next 24 hours. First hour, call your local NRCS office about EQIP funding. Download the current water usage data from your meters. Take photos of your worst performing field. Next day, contact 3 sensor system providers for quotes. Talk to your neighboring farms about data sharing. Start documenting your current irrigation costs. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Change is hard. Your grandpa's methods built this farm. But remember, your grandpa didn't stick with his great-grandpa's methods. He innovated. He adapted. He used the best tools available to him. Today's tools just happen to include sensors, smartphones, and satellites. But the principle is the same. Use everything at your disposal to farm smarter, not harder. Before we wrap up, let me share one final thought. Every day you wait to modernize your irrigation is costing you money. With a typical payback period of less than 1 growing season, the real question isn't, can I afford to do this? It's, can I afford not to? Remember, the USDA's EQIP program covers 75% of costs. Payback periods average 6 to 8 months. Water restrictions are coming, ready or not. Early adopters will have the advantage. Bella, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just one, Douglas. To our listeners, your grandpa built something amazing with the tools he had. Now it's your turn to build something amazing with the tools you have. The future of farming isn't about choosing between tradition and technology. It's about using technology to keep those traditions alive. Until next time, this is Bella.
And Douglas, reminding you that in today's dairy industry, the smartest drop wins.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bullvine Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's insightful discussion. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Catch you next time on the Bullvine Podcast, where bovine expertise and community come together.